good, everybody? Hope everybody's doing fine. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Glad you're here. Welcome to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, where we prefer truth over narrative and principles over politics. Now, before we get into everything, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so that way you'll be updated whenever I go live or whenever I post an interview or whenever I do anything ever. And also, please, just 2 seconds, just hit that like button. That helps me out a lot. And also hit the share button so that we can get this out to more people. Gonna have a pretty decent, good, awesome episode today. I am pre-recording this, and I'll probably be doing that going forward for a while. It doesn't mean I won't do live streams anymore. I still will, but it kind of helps me out with my schedule to just kind of pre-record things. So just so y'all know, but it doesn't mean I won't be going live again, and I'll be letting you guys know when that's going to happen. Also, before we get started on this episode, just want to remind you that LibertyNation.com is a proud sponsor of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. Check out LibertyNation.com for all of your conservatarian news, original articles, analysis, videos, podcasts, Liberty Nation Radio, and their signature TV program, The Conservative 5, all on LibertyNation.com. Conservative news where truth matters. All right, so we got some things going on, but much of what I'm going to talk about right now is stuff that's kind of flying under the radar. I mean, it's not hitting all of the normal news outlets, and it's not part of the primary news cycle that's going on right now. But these are some very important issues and stuff that I'll also be touching on in other videos. There's a lot that I want to talk about. But it's important that we recognize these things, because a lot of times we get distracted by the pageantry, the political theater, the let's go Brandon and all that. And I get it. I mean, that's fine. That's part of the battle. That's part of the culture war. That's part of society. And, I'm not saying that we should pay no attention to those things. But while we're doing that, because I know sometimes it's fun. I have fun with it. I've been, doing satirical tweets on Let's Go Brandon. I've been making fun of it too. But at the same time, there are other issues that fly under the radar, and we always risk getting distracted by these things when there are things that are happening under our noses. So it's important that we keep things in perspective, and I want to delve into more of these issues so that while we're doing the whole Let's Go Brandon stuff or whatever the outrage of the day is, we're still learning and seeing what's going on in our society, especially when it comes to the local level. So the first thing that I want to talk about is a story on data mining. And for those who aren't familiar with what that is, that's when usually it's a private company uses surveys or other means of gaining data, usually for marketing purposes. So like you might get a survey when you go to the website of a company that you buy your services and products from, and they may get some data from you. Usually it's voluntarily. A lot of times, when it comes to social media, though, there's that terms and conditions that most people don't read, and they get your data from that. So Google does it, big tech in general does it, but it's a common practice. But this particular story involves data mining with your children, or if you don't have children, your friends' children, or your nieces or cousins or what have you. And this story was very interesting to me because, again, it's one of those things that flies under the radar, one of these things that we don't really pay attention to. And you probably know that privacy, it's been a pretty hotly debated topic, right? I just wrote an article on what I'm going to talk about, and I'll put the link in the show notes. But if you remember when Edward Snowden revealed that the NSA was spying on American citizens, we were pissed off. We were incensed, right? And since then, and even before, people have been pretty suspicious of government surveillance and data mining itself, because the government can't always do data mining directly because of the Constitution, but they can find ways to get around that by contracting with a private company that can do it for them so that they're technically not doing it directly. But there was a recent report from Real Clear Education, and it reveals the extent to which the government contractors are helping the government gather information about children, in large part without their parents' knowledge. Now, the report from Real Clear Education, it talked about a government contractor called Panorama Education, Inc. This is a company, a private organization. And what they're doing is they're helping school districts gather data on their students' quote, social and emotional learning. So this is ostensibly designed to gather data on how children socialize and how they learn and where they struggle, where they excel, all that stuff. However, I mean, because that doesn't sound so bad from the get-go, right? I mean, you do want to understand better how children learn so that you can improve the quality of your education. So on that level, okay, all right, I get it. We all want our kids to do better in school, right? We all want our schools to be more effective, especially since we pay for them, right? But in this particular case, and in others that I won't have time to go into, this organization is asking about issues that might not quite be appropriate, that parents might not be so willing to accept. The report indicates that so this Panorama company, they'll conduct studies, they'll put out surveys for kids to answer questions. And according to Real Clear Education, they're asking some prying questions, including gender and sexual orientation, views on racial issues, stuff that doesn't have much to do with reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? So, according to the report, many parents whose children attended schools working with Panorama to gather information on students opted their kids out of the survey. And I'm going to explain how the opting out process works in a second. But they opted their kids out of the survey, but the students were still given the survey and allowed to take it at the school. So an example is a woman named Caroline Liquinco. She is the mother of children who attend North Huntington High School. I can't remember what state that's in. I think that's in Virginia, but I could be wrong. But she said that the schools are violating the students' privacy. She said, quote, "They are data mining and psychologically profiling our kids. The questions they are asking are absolutely inappropriate in a school setting." And she says, quote, "Schools have sold our children's privacy to a data analytics company that is tracking attendance, behavior, and families' financial status." They are getting very, they're prying. They're really digging deeper than they probably should be. So here's a quote from Real Clear Education. They said, quote, "School districts defend the decision to hire companies like Panorama, claiming that addressing students' social and emotional learning helps identify struggling kids through another sales product, which is the early warning system that gives students a rating based on algorithms. But concerned parents see the surveys as fishing expeditions that violate privacy and give activist school boards cover to infuse curricula with divisive ideology, from queer theory to critical race theory, which teaches that society's ills must be viewed primarily through the lens of race." Now, there's this big debate over critical race theory, right? But this don't just focus on critical race theory when it comes to the classrooms. And you guys know how I feel about that whole thing, whether it's critical race theory or not. I've done that in prior episodes, so I won't delve into that right now. But there are issues even beyond critical race theory that you guys need to be worrying about if you have kids in school. I mean, the leftist agenda doesn't just include critical race theory. They're also infusing a lot of ideas on sexuality, transgenderism, and a lot of other stuff. I mean, even the survey, the students who take the survey are asked a lot of questions. Like, here's one, quote, "How do you describe your sexual orientation?" Another question asks, "Are you transgender?" Now, obviously, this has nothing to do with reading, writing, and arithmetic. So there's something else going on here, right? So A lot of parents have found out about Panorama's activities and they've spoken out against it. And here's the issue with consent or opting your children out. They take issue with the fact that these schools require passive parent consent. So there's a difference between passive parental consent and active parental consent when it comes to a program like these surveys, or even like maybe more sensitive types of learning material, that kind of thing. Passive parent consent means that it is assumed that the parents consent to their children taking the survey unless they submit a request to opt their child out of the study. So by default, the students are going to be given the survey unless parents submit a notice or a request to opt their child out of the study. And like I said, even in a lot of these cases, they're still being given the survey. But here's how they do this. And again, they haven't just done this with Panorama's surveys. They have these types of requirements for other sensitive material that parents might not want their kids to be learning at school. But they use the passive parent consent model because they know that a lot of parents aren't even going to know about it. They may send a notice that maybe gets overlooked, or maybe they don't even hear about it at all, so that they don't even know that they're supposed to opt their children out. In this way, they're able to get as many kids as possible. In Fairfax County, Virginia, this is another district that has partnered with Panorama. They're getting slammed too by parents. Another mother also said that her child's school sent her daughter's personal data to the company despite being opted out. So, and I'll give kind of the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure a lot of these are being done on mistake. I'm sure that there are plenty of parents who opted their children out of the survey and then their children didn't get the survey. I'm sure, mistakes happen, right? You always try to not attribute to malice that which you can attribute to incompetence. So I'm sure a lot of these are accidents. At the same time, you kind of got to wonder, is this kind of happening on purpose in some instances? Now, what's interesting about this issue is that, if you recall the hearing that Attorney General Merrick Garland participated in, where his son-in-law was brought up. Well, Panorama was co-founded by Merrick Garland's daughter's husband, so Merrick Garland's son-in-law, and that did come up during a recent House Judiciary Committee hearing as a potential conflict of interest, because Panorama does want to gather this data to kind of make it easier for the woke crowd to infuse ideas like critical race theory or the left's ideas on sexuality and all of these things. And a lot of this is going unnoticed by parents. Now, one of the reasons why this is becoming more prevalent is because a lot of these people got busted during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's one of the good things that came out of that, because now parents, since their children are at home, parents are more privy to what's being taught in the classroom because they can overhear it or they can listen to it on, actively and see what's being taught there. That's how a lot of this critical race theory stuff came to light. People knew about it before, but it wasn't as widespread because people just didn't have the knowledge. So Panorama is not the only company that does this. Politico published a report in 2014 about a data analytics firm. It was called Newton. And the Politico report says that this company has, quote, peered into the brains of more than 4 million students across the country. The report also noted that, quote, by monitoring every mouse click, every keystroke, every split-second hesitation as children work through digital textbooks, Newton is able to find out not just what individual kids know, but how they think. Now, again, this is being done ostensibly to make education more effective. But you have to wonder, is there something more going on here? Well, when I see questions like, are you transgender, or how would you describe your sexuality? Yeah, there's something more going on here. This isn't about educating. This is where you get into indoctrination. And when you're able to use data to analyze the attitudes of students towards these issues, then you can better market or indoctrinate to them. Again, not just on sexuality, but they're trying to measure their attitudes on race or racial issues. It's kind of obvious what's going on here. This is not something that's being done in good faith. This is not being done to help educators educate more effectively. I can't help but to believe that there's something more insidious going on here. And here's the problem. There hasn't been a whole lot of legislation on this. I mean, our lawmakers know this is happening, but I haven't seen any significant action being taken at the federal level. I think a lot of other issues are kind of trumping the data mining issue. Now, there have been some states that have been trying to pass some legislation that would limit data mining in school districts. I haven't seen much movement on it when I looked, but I'm going to keep looking to see if there are other districts or other states who have passed legislation that will prevent these companies from digging too deep. In Florida, state lawmakers are actually pushing a measure that would require schools to obtain written permission from parents, allowing their children to participate in these types of surveys. So this measure would require them to not use that passive parental consent model. They would have to actively solicit permission from parents. And here's the thing: if they do that, and then parents say, "Okay, go ahead," then that's on them. That's their choice. But at least under that type of system, parents know what's going on. Assuming that they tell the truth about what the study is about. But a lot of districts don't want that because they know that using the passive model means that they're going to be able to maximize the amount of data they can collect. If they use an active model where the district has to solicit permission, they're going to get fewer kids because a lot of parents are going to be like, hell no, you're not going to be asking my kids these questions. Go take a hike. So here's the issue. I mean, I'm glad that there are people in Florida fighting this, but we need to do this in every state. But this issue will not be addressed until more parents are informed about this stuff or informed that it's happening in the first place. That's one of the reasons why I wrote about it. That's one of the reasons why I'm talking about it right now, because we can't, these people thrive on people's ignorance. If we don't know that this is happening, they can keep doing it. So we need, people need to get the word out there as to what is happening in these schools and what the hard left is trying to infuse in the material that our children are being taught. So we're going to go on to the next thing here, and I'm going to keep an eye on this, so I'll probably have more updates on this as it continues. But I would definitely read the article on it and definitely share it with your friends, share it on your social media. Of course, share this video, which you should have already been doing. Hit that share button. But yeah, people need to know about this. This is important, even if you don't have kids. I mean, you don't want to make it easier for the hard left to indoctrinate the next generation. And they are, believe me, they are trying, not just in college, but now they're doing it, in elementary, junior high, and high school. So you got to watch out for it. And again, I'm not saying that this is happening at every school. I don't think this is happening at most schools, but it's happening at a lot. And if you've been watching what's been going on, the left is trying to get this to be more prevalent in our education system, more as prevalent as possible, even here in Texas. So please keep an eye on this. All right. Now then, let's talk about the polls. How's Biden doing? How are the Democrats doing? What's going on here? Well, it ain't looking good for President Joe Biden. It's not looking good. I don't think it's going to get any better. And Axios published an article detailing a number of different polls about how Americans feel about Biden's performance and the Democrats and, where the nation is headed. So I'm going to throw out some numbers for you. An NBC News poll, which just came out a few days ago, it found that 54% of Americans disapprove of Biden's performance. His favorable rating is 40%. Unfavorable rating is 48%. Let's see. Now, this is basically what it was for Trump during this time in his presidency. For Trump, it was 38% favorable, 50% unfavorable. So not much of a difference here. And what's amazing to me is that this is the case, even though the media does not treat Biden the way it treated Trump. The media every single day was hammering Trump. The media has been covering up for Biden for the most part. The only time that the media actually did their job and spoke truth to power was during the Afghanistan withdrawal. That's when they did their job, and I gave them their props for that, even though I knew it was going to be short-lived, because there's still issues going on with the Afghanistan guys. We've still got Americans over there who want to come back, and nothing's happening, and the media's not really reporting much on that. So in general, they give Biden favorable coverage and they downplay his failures, and yet his his approval rating is still in the toilet. It's amazing to me. It kind of shows you that the activist media, they're very influential. I'm not going to downplay it, but they're not always as influential as we think they are. I mean, we can see what's going on. And by the way, a lot of the drop in Biden's approval is among Democrats. So here's another poll. Well, actually, this is in the same poll, just a different statistic. 7 out of 10 adults, that's 70%, believe that the nation is heading in the wrong direction. This includes 48% of Democrats. I'm going to say that again. 70% of American adults believe that the nation is headed in the wrong direction. This also includes 48% of Democrats, almost half. Now, this poll also found that of those who approve of Biden, only 18% say they strongly approve of Biden. So even the people who approve of him, they're not that excited about him. There's some other numbers here. Here's another interesting poll. So Gallup, they published the findings of a survey that said 52% of Americans say that the government is, quote, trying to do too many things. And this is a reverse from last year, where the majority said that the government should be doing more to solve problems. Very interesting that Americans think that the government right now is trying to do too much. Now, here's some other numbers. Blue states. Biden is quickly losing support in blue states. There were more polls that came out that show that in key blue states, Biden he ain't doing so good. Michigan, according to I can't remember which poll that was. Anyway, but in Michigan, only 40% of likely voters approve of the president's performance. This is a 10% decrease from what it was in March. And this poll was just taken a few days ago. I think it was just last week. 52% of Michigan voters disapprove of Biden's performance. Another poll among New Jersey voters, Monmouth University poll, showed that Biden's support has fallen to 42%. This is 8 points lower than what it was in August. Now in Maryland, he still enjoys some approval there. He's got a 53% approval rating in Maryland, but that's a 9-point drop from when the last time that poll was taken. So his numbers are going this way. It's not good. And the Washington Free Beacon, they pointed out, quote, Biden's decline has been particularly acute among independents, whose support for the president has fallen 27 points since Inauguration Day. Biden now boasts the second worst approval rating of any president at this point in his term. Now, the only thing that's slightly surprising here is that he has lost so much support among Democrats, among Democratic voters. I'm not surprised that his approval has dropped with them. I'm surprised that it's dropped this much. I mean, for 48% of Democrats to say that the country is headed in the wrong direction, given that Democrats have control of the White House and both chambers of Congress, it's not looking good for the Democrats, guys. And at this point, I don't see how they turn this around. I don't think they'll be able to. I've been saying for months now that they are in desperate need of a win. They need a victory, but they're running out of time. They need a victory right now, a major victory, or at least something that they can spin as a major victory. Now, here's the thing. The Democrats haven't done anything anything significant in Congress since the coronavirus relief bill. They haven't been able to push through Biden's anti-gun agenda. They haven't been able to do infrastructure. They haven't been able to do this Build Back Better Act. And if it does pass, which it might, it's going to be a version that is so watered down that it's not even going to look like what was originally promised. Now, a lot of that stuff they had to throw in there to appease the progressives, but Manchin and Sinema, their constituents don't want all of that. And of course, you know how Republicans feel about it. So they're taking a chainsaw to that Build Back Better Act right now, and they're cutting out a lot. Now, this may be okay with a lot of Americans because, like I said, Gallup said that they think the government's trying to do too much. So maybe most Americans will be fine with that if they pass it. I don't think that's going to be enough of a victory to turn it around, though, guys. I don't. I think the way that Biden has mishandled pretty much every single problem he's been presented with, and the fact that Democrats in Congress can't seem to get anything done, they're toast in the midterms. And then if you take history into consideration, you already know that in the midterms, it typically at least one or both chambers of Congress goes to the party opposite of the one that is in the White House. So I think Democrats know they're going to lose. There are indications of that. I've written about it and I've talked about it, but this is just how things are going to look. Now, on one level, that's a good thing because once the midterms are over, there won't be a chance for the far left progressive crowd to ram anything through. Right now, they still have a chance to get some stuff through because they do have control, but they may not get everything that they want, but they can get some of it. So but once that clock runs down, once the midterm elections are over, that's pretty much it for Biden's agenda. There's no chance of him getting much done unless he's willing to compromise with Republicans, which he may or may not do, or he may just step down and then Kamala Harris takes over. I don't know. But the political landscape is going to change yet again next year, and it's coming up quick. It's not that far away. So I'm going to be watching this. I mean, Biden knows that he needs a win. That's why he's pushing Congress to get something done on Build Back Better. But this is also going to hurt them in the midterms. The Republicans, I think they're going to take back the House, and there's a very good chance that they'll take back the Senate too. So again, it's going to be interesting to see how this works out when you have a Biden White House and a Republican-controlled Congress. It's going to hold a lot of stuff up, which might be a good thing. That means that they're not going to be able to pass a lot of crappy policy, right? So we'll keep an eye on this. And but whose approval rating isn't plummeting? You know whose approval rating isn't plummeting? That's right. It's the fine folks over at LibertyNation.com. Our approval rating is going up, up, up. So don't forget to head on over to LibertyNation.com. Check it out. Check out my work over there. Check out all of the other authors. Fine people there writing. A lot of great, excellent, incredible writers. Check out their YouTube channel. You can even join their member zone if you want to get premium content. You can also sign up for the daily briefing so you can get updates in your email. But again, when you go to LibertyNation.com, you're going to get the news analyzed from a conservatarian point of view, but it's not going to have all that spin. It's not going to have all that outrage porn. It's going to be more nuanced, and you'll appreciate opinions coming from a wide range of people on the right. Like I said, you've got libertarians, you got conservatarians like myself, you've got anarchists, which I might become one someday, and then you've got more traditional Republicans. You've got the whole mix there. So definitely check out LibertyNation.com. I'm not just saying that because I'm a writer there, but that's one of the reasons why I like writing for LibertyNation.com, because I can bring more of a fresh perspective instead of just saying what everybody else is saying, right? All right. Last thing I want to talk about is local corruption. This story pissed me off. It'll probably piss you off too. And you know what? I actually just did an interview with somebody else involving local politics in a city here in Texas, and I'm going to be dropping that soon. But if this teaches you anything, if you get anything from the story, It's that you need to be paying very close attention to what your city council is doing, but also your school boards, because some of these people are just corrupt as hell. I'm just going to say it. So, you know that there's a big fight going on with the school boards. You've got a lot of parents speaking out against critical race theory. You got them speaking out against vaccine mandates, mask mandates, and they are being vociferous in their opposition to these things. They go to these school boards and they make their opinions known. But some of these school boards are trying to find ways to prevent people from speaking out. Now, they're not doing this by trying to persuade people to believe what they believe. They're just trying to just shut them down. I mean, you remember that whole fuss over the domestic terrorist thing, where the National School Board Association colluded with the Biden administration to try to leverage the Department of Justice against people speaking out against critical race theory and other issues. They want to use the state to tamp down on that. I mean, Senator Ted Cruz laid into Merrick Garland saying, you don't even provide examples of actual harassment going on, but you're saying that you're going to use the FBI to crack down on harassment. There are very few instances of actual threats and harassment. And yes, those people need to be dealt with. Anybody who sends threats or death threats to people, they should be thrown under the jail. But it's not happening as much as they want us to think. And in fact, there are death threats happening the other way too. Either way, that should be handled at the local level, not at the federal level. So all that to say is that local school boards, you got to watch them. A Minnesota school board created a very, I'll say it, insidious and evil way to scare parents into not speaking out against critical race theory and other problems that they see in the school. And the strategy, it's such a blatant strategy, guys. Like, they can try to cover it up or try to clean it up. No, it is 100% obvious what they're trying to do. Their strategy is to make these people worried about facing repercussions if they dare to show up at a school board meeting and say, you guys are full of crap. We don't need this CRT in our classrooms or what have you. So this is from the New York Post. They reported, quote, residents of Mankato, Minnesota were required to state their home addresses during the public portion of school board meetings this month in order to address officials. Jody Sapp, the chair of the board for Mankato area public schools, laid out new rules before the open forum on October 18th, including prohibiting residents from addressing individual school board members and requiring that every speaker publicly state the address of their home. So this means that if you are in this school district and you've got a problem with what they're doing, before you can speak at the public school meeting, you have to tell everybody your address. And this stuff is filmed, right? So you have to tell them your exact street address before his or her name and address for the record. Failure to do so will result in an individual not being allowed to speak. She also said that you can't directly criticize any individual member of the board. She said, quote, effective tonight, open forum participants are prohibited from calling out or addressing any individual school board or school district staff member. If this occurs, open forum will be closed. So this means that basically, if you want to speak out against critical race theory, you have to dox yourself. You have to tell people where you live so that they can come and harass you. And that is exactly what Sapp is trying to do here. She wants to make people afraid to speak out. There was a situation where a man got up and he didn't want to say his address, so she wasn't going to let him speak. And then he kind of mumbled his address so that people couldn't hear it, but she made him repeat it. And he had to say his exact address. So if he says something that somebody doesn't like, and it might be a crazy person, they know exactly where he lives. They know where his wife lives. They know where his children live. And in this world that we're living in today, we've seen political violence. We've seen people go crazy. Now, chances are maybe nothing will happen. It probably won't, but still, the idea that you're going to force people to potentially put themselves in danger just because you don't want to hear what they have to say about critical race theory. That is the very height of corruption. Like, we always think that corruption happens at the federal level or maybe at the state level. It does, but you got to watch your local school boards. You got to watch your city council, because I'm telling you, if you're watching this video, you might have a corrupt school board, or you might have a school board who has corrupt members on it and maybe some good ones. The situation I'm going to be talking about later has this exact same situation, where some members of the board are honest, but the rest aren't. And they will use their power in a way that helps them to push their agenda. And I wouldn't be surprised if other school boards adopted the same policy. Now, I don't know, maybe there will be an outcry against this and she'll be forced to change the rules. But I do know one thing. I mean, if the trends that are happening right now are any indication, people like her are going to get voted out. They're going to vote in people who aren't corrupt. So that's kind of what I wanted to leave you with there. I know we like to focus on Biden. I know we're concerned that he may have crapped himself at the Vatican. I get that we have to pay attention to these things. I get that we have to pay attention to what's happening in Congress. But guys, you got to look at what's going on in your local community. And maybe things are going fine. That's great if it is. But you need to know, because not all of these people deserve the positions that they're put in. But what they count on is the fact, or the notion that nobody's paying attention to what they're doing. That's what they prey on. That's how they work. That's how they're able to do a lot of the things that they do. So keep an eye on it. Yeah, that's all I can say, because if you don't, you are empowering them. Thank you for joining me for another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. Like I said before, if you haven't done it already, which you should have, hit that like button, hit that share button. If you haven't subscribed yet, get her done. And until next time, keep your minds free.